I made a game where you can switch between 3 dimensions that each have unique traits. Each dimension gives you unique movement, changes how enemies behave, and even determines how the environment works. It's a puzzle game and a platformer mashed into one. So like 8 months ago, I was making this game that had to do with different color palettes. You could change from 1-bit to 2-bit to 3-bit and so on. This would change how things interact with each other. I had this Among Us looking dude and very little actually done. It was literally just basic platformer movement and platforms that would change from solid to one way. I added a bat that would follow you too, but yeah, it did not work the best. I had a lot of ideas for this old game, but I needed way more experience before I was able to make anything decent. Fast forward to today, I got burnt out on my current project, and by burnt out I mean I got stuck and now I think I have to throw away a month's worth of code. So to get my mind off of things, I decided it would be cool to try and make something like this again. So here's my plan. It's a platformer, you can change the dimension, speedrun timer, cause game design is hard. The first thing I did was make a sprite for my little dude. I made a square guy and I turned him into a marshmallow. I liked the marshmallow look and then I put huge eyes on him. I made several iterations of him with lots of different colors and even a toilet paper roll. I like the double outline style on sprites that I've seen in game jams, so that's what I did to my character. I wanted to keep the other entities in a similar style, so I based them off of my player. I was really happy with these 3 in particular, and I spent hours on them to make them perfect. But perfection isn't real, and I'm just avoiding coding right now. So I'm gonna start the exciting part, because it's time to start designing the game. I started with the most important part of a platformer, the movement. The movement was super basic and my plan was to leave it like that. Then I coded a simple way to change the dimension. See down here, it's changing in the output. Then I actually had a good idea. Change my movement based on the dimension I'm in. Although it was a bit tedious to code, I thought this was worth it. My biggest challenge was making the movement feel unique in each dimension. If you look at this very neat code up here, I made a little dictionary for all the stats in each dimension. So for example, I can make future coding a lot easier by just telling the player to fall by the stats.gravity amount. And that will use the gravity stat of the current dimension, so I don't have to use any more horribly coded if statements. Speaking of horribly coded if statements, thanks to today's sponsor, Absolutely Nobody, you can see exactly how I code my games. If you'd like to get access for these project files and directly support me, check out my Ko-fi. Playtesting will also be available in the future. With these separate stats, I made each dimension feel a little bit more unique. I had a stroke of genius and decided these sprites could be the player sprites in the other dimensions. Since they were all based off of the same sprite, they kind of fit. When switching dimensions, I added a slow motion effect to make it easier to react as the player. Sadly, I ended up removing this because it messed up the physics too much. Then I added a transition animation to play above the sprites. And I was really happy with how this looked. I thought it looked super cool. Next, I was going to make a different background for each dimension. I already had this blue pattern from my old Metroidvania that I did not finish. And then I made this gray one and red one for the other 2 dimensions. When I put them as a background, I loved it. Except you. This one was gross and way too small. Well, I mean it was average size, but I needed something a little bit bigger. So I made this new pattern. Now it looks really good. In a lot of 2D games, it can feel pretty flat, and sometimes it's hard to separate the background from the foreground. You can make a parallax effect and it usually makes the game feel a lot better. Basically, it just means the background moves slower than the foreground. That's what I did with the stars in my game Smastronaut. Without it, they wouldn't feel like stars, though it'd feel like random dots that you're just flying through. Anyways, Godot's parallax nodes are amazing, and they let you change how fast it moves in each direction. This can make each dimension feel even more different from the rest. Dimension 1 is normal, your typical parallax. The background just moves slightly slower than the foreground. Dimension 2's background moves faster horizontal and slower vertical. And in Dimension 3, the background moves super fast vertically and it doesn't move at all horizontally. Now that my character is done, I can work on the stages. I have this auto tile map, which is a pain to set up, but it makes creating levels so much faster. Basically, it gives each of these tiles certain rules, so it knows if this one is supposed to be a corner piece, an edge piece, etc. Next, I made a door. It doesn't look like one or function like one, but it'll do for now. Cool thing about tile maps in Godot, you can put entire scenes in it, which makes it very convenient to place things like doors, keys, and hazards correctly on the map. Next thing to do was to make an enemy. I called this one Bug, and I made it similar to a Koopa in Mario. It'll walk back and forth, and it'll turn around when it hits a wall or a ledge. Finally, I started making a few sample levels. Okay, here's some super nerdy dev stuff. I coded this thing that will automatically add everything in this folder to the stage list. So now without any extra work, it'll automatically send me to the next stage in the list when I go through a door. Then, you know I had to make a spike, and if you touch it, you die. In game though, don't worry. Actually, you don't even die in game, you just go back to the spawn point. Kind of out of laziness, but also efficiency, I made the spawn point always at 0, 0. So I don't need to worry about placing the player on a super specific spot on every single level. Nope, it's just always 0, 0. Then I added a speedrun timer with a pixel font, just to let everyone know I'm not messing around with this game. I will hold the world record. Okay, so after all that, I made this little death animation thingy, and I love it. Next, I broke out old reliable, screen shake. And I added hit stop for the first time, which was a very good touch. I'm glad I did it because it reminds me of Super Mario whenever you die. Then I added the best part of this entire game, the shockwave. This effect is super cool, so shout out to the guy who made it, and I'll put a link to it down below. This gave the perfect vibe of changing dimensions, so I replaced the old transition with this. Next, I knew I had to make a number of items, objects, and enemies that the player would be able to interact with. The first one being a cracked tile. I had this concept in my original game, but I didn't have it programmed. In this, it can be stomped on like an enemy, but acts solid for Dimension 2 and one way for Dimension 3. The second interactable I made was a key. The doors know if there's a key on stage, and if there is one, it stays locked. Otherwise, it's wide open. I also made a cute bug sprite for my bug enemy, and in Dimension 2, he turns around and goes extra fast. I made these tiles which are solid in Dimensions 1 and 3, but disappear in Dimension 2. I made a flying robot that shoots lasers, and the lasers follow you in Dimension 3. Then I made this button and these on and off blocks. Very original idea, I know. Pressing the button would turn these blocks on or off. And I did a whole lot of bug fixing so these things will work together much better. My next addition was a nice quality of life change. I added this thing to the UI which displays your current dimension relative to the others. It's nothing crazy, but without it, even I would get tripped up on if I need to go to the next or the previous dimension. Then, all I had to do was make a title screen, a win screen, and make a few levels. The process of creating levels was super fun, and it reminded me of Super Mario Maker. If you think this game will be fun, you can try it out for free on itch.io. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.